am I really? I'm pure consciousness. And that consciousness changes, apparently changes. But actually what only changes is the contents of the consciousness. Sometimes we point our consciousness at our senses, and then we experience the qualities of the material world. Sometimes we point our consciousness at our mind, and we experience thoughts and dreams and imagination. Sometimes we point our consciousness at intelligence, and we experience our plans and our dreams, and our values, and all these other functions of intelligence. And sometimes, if we're really lucky, we point our consciousness at itself. And we become conscious of our consciousness. This is called recursiveness, or self-referentiality. Consciousness is purely and perfectly self-referential. Self-referential means it can only be compared with itself. It cannot be compared with any other thing, because there's nothing else that exists in this world that has that same quality as consciousness. The only other thing that you can compare your consciousness to is the supreme consciousness, which exists at its root. There is Atma, the soul, the self, and there is Paramatma, which means the source or the root of consciousness, which is the supreme self. Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead. You see? So if we actually realize the self, then we can go deeper and we can realize the super soul. The soul and super soul, Atma and Paramatma. The soul, Jiva, and the supreme person, Bhagavan. We are persons, and he's also a person. So all the attributes of persons, individuality, personality, consciousness, mind, ego, desire, activity, life, emotions, creativity, initiative, will, action. All of these attributes are attributes of the soul. And how do we know that? When the soul leaves the body at death, all these attributes disappear at the same time. Instantly. As soon as the soul leaves the body. All you have to do is knock somebody over the head, knock them out. What happens? The soul temporarily leaves the body. And guess what? All these things disappear at the same time. Personality, individuality, will, consciousness, activity, it all stops. The only thing that's left is the mechanical functions of the body. And then when the soul comes back, the same things start up again. Mind, intelligence, false ego, personality, identity, will, action, emotion, initiative, creativity, perception, everything starts all at once. As soon as the soul comes back in touch with the body, and the person wakes up. See? So these attributes, these functions are all qualities of the soul. That's why you will never be able to, or the scientists will never be able to isolate consciousness. Scientists will never be able to measure consciousness. Because consciousness is not a thing. Consciousness is a quality. You see? Just like you can't measure red. You can't take red and put it in a test tube. You can have some red paint, or you can have some red stone, or you can have a red piece of plastic or a red piece of paper or something like that. But you can't have red all by itself. You understand? Because red is a quality. It's not a thing. Similarly, consciousness is a quality. It's not a thing. But it's a quality of a spirit soul. It's a quality of a transcendental object. So you can't put it in a test tube. You can't isolate it. You can't weigh it, measure it, hook it up to some kind of instrument and do tests. It's not possible. The only instrument that responds to consciousness is a living body. You see? So the proof of the existence of the soul is that we are alive. That's the proof. See? But stupid people won't accept that proof. They're stupid. And the reason I say they're stupid is because they themselves are conscious. But they don't realize the meaning of it. They themselves are alive. They themselves have all these qualities. But they don't know the meaning of it. Because they don't have transcendental knowledge. They don't have knowledge from God. They don't accept God. They reject God and they reject all of God's teachings. And therefore they don't even know the meaning of their own life, their own existence, their own consciousness. This is very sad. It's tragic, actually. And because of this nonsense, the whole world is being misled. The whole world is being drawn down a trail of suffering. Just a minute, I'll take questions in a minute. So we don't want suffering, we want joy, we want pleasure. But the joy and pleasure that we want is not going to be found by going out through the senses. It's only going to be found by going in, through consciousness, to the super consciousness, from the soul to the super soul, and from the super soul to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the actual source of happiness. Everything that we want to enjoy, everything we think is nice, everything that gives us pleasure, everything that gives us hope, is all coming from God. There's no other source besides God. Like this nice house is made of wood, but this wood comes from trees. Trees are living creatures. And without God, nothing could live. So, because of God, we can have this nice house. It's all coming from Him. The earth that the trees grow in is coming from Him. Nobody can create a planet. They have to be created by God. And even if you say, well, the planets are created by the sun, fine. Who created the sun? You see? It takes a superhuman intelligence, a superhuman ability to even create this material world. What to speak of the spiritual world? What to speak of the soul, consciousness? Where does consciousness come from? It can only come from God. It can only come from a greater consciousness. Just like we see human beings come from human beings. Dogs and cats come from dogs and cats. So where does consciousness come from? It has to come from a higher consciousness. It's so simple, folks. It's really common sense. Consciousness can only be born from consciousness, just like cats can only be born from cats. It's so simple, it's so direct, it's so plain, it's so obvious. But it takes a self-realized soul to see these things. Self-realized soul simply means one who is no longer sick. One who no longer has this material disease. Somebody who's just normal. You know, it's like it's not really any big deal. It's just not being normal. Everybody else is completely sick. You know, and we're trying to deal with this. We're trying to help this. We're trying to cure this. Well, we have a little hospital here in Chile. And we have a few patients. And the doctor is the holy name. I'm not even the doctor. I'm just the nurse. So try to understand. We're trying to cure people of this material disease, which is a disease of consciousness. It's a lack of knowledge. It's just like if you don't eat. If you don't eat, then you'll get weak and you'll get sick. Your body needs nourishment. Your body needs fuel. Well, what is the nourishment for the soul? You see? What is the nourishment for consciousness? The nourishment is transcendental knowledge. If we get transcendental knowledge, then our soul can stay healthy and strong, even in this material world. Huh? Actually, of course, the soul is never damaged or hurt by anything that happens in this world, but we think it is, because the quality of our consciousness is determined by the quality of the contents. See? So when we focus our consciousness on material things, we feel very bad because they don't have the kind of quality that our soul enjoys. Huh? It's just like if you have a TV, but it'll only get one channel, and that channel is nothing but reruns of I Love Lucy. Huh? Or old Mets games or something like, completely boring. It's completely boring, completely irrelevant to your existence. Completely